Hi, I'm Catherine Morgan from Point A to Point B Transitions. I'm a career transition expert and business consultant to consultants. Welcome to Evolving Working with my co-host, the fabulous Susan Eckstein. Susan.
Hello, Catherine. Catherine. I'm Susan Eckstein. I'm a women's empowerment expert, keynote speaker, facilitator, and certified coach. And in a nutshell, I help high-achieving women own their personal power so they can stop shrinking and have the confidence to be seen, be heard, and take up space.
And today we're joined by Chicago radio legend, Catherine Johns, and also my very dear friend for a long time. Catherine actually wrote a book called Show Up and Shine. So she was the perfect person to come in and talk to us about people shrinking, not showing up, not stepping into their light. And I'm going to let Susan kick us off because Catherine put up a post on LinkedIn that sparked this.
Oh. Yeah, Catherine, I read a post, I want to say it was earlier this week, where you talked about watching the January 6th committee hearings.
Yes.
And Zoe Lofgren.
Yes.
How she was showing up. And I would just love if you could tell people about that post and what about her just made you just think, wow, this is an important topic.
I walked in, turned on my television, and there was a 74-year-old woman staring at me from my television screen. And I realized how rare that is. Right there in high def, close up, a woman who looks her age. And so many of us are self-conscious about aging. And many of us take sometimes dramatic steps to hide the evidence of aging. I'm not sure it always works very well, but I think it's common in politics and in media and in business increasingly. And I was so excited to see somebody being her age, looking her age, and being in a position of power on television in front of the world and everybody.
Yeah, when I was watching it, I had a similar reaction to you, that she just had this powerful presence and she was holding court and highly respected. And the way the camera had just, focused exclusively on her for parts of it. And it was really dramatic because, like you, we don't see that very often.
We don't. I will say I wanted to give her a little coaching on making eye contact through the camera. Not that she's asked me for my advice, but if she did, I could give her some. And she's not alone either. There is a thing about speaking into the ether, which is what it sometimes feels like when you're broadcasting or podcasting. And so I thought she could have used a little bit of help with that. But in general, you're right. She was measured, she was direct, she was deliberate. And did I mention she's 74? Because that, I don't mean to harp on her age, but that really was the thing for me. It's just, we're just not accustomed to seeing women, especially women that age, being powerful in high definition.
I know I'm not going to be the only person to say a lot of us don't love seeing ourselves on videos. Certainly.
Oh, tell me about it.
Right. It is a jarring experience to first hear yourself on audio, and maybe you can get past that. But then when you see yourself on video, we forgot to tell people about your background, Catherine. Can you catch people up on your professional background?
So you might notice that I have a great face for radio, and not coincidentally, I was in radio for 25 years. So I know something about talking into the ether. And when the pandemic hit and my speaker business caved in, it actually took me a little while to figure out, this virtual thing, I was doing that before we had a name for it. And I am good at it and I can teach it. And so I spent most of the pandemic coaching people to have a bigger presence and a stronger presence on virtual platforms and to use the platforms to greater effect. And that was a hard lesson for a lot of people to learn. It was somewhat ironic for me because, as Catherine suggested, I was not crazy about seeing myself on video. And I come back by that honestly. You know, when I got into radio, women were, let's just say, unusual and were expected to be cute and
Nice.
perky and support the boys.
Mm.
And I wasn't that cute and I wasn't that perky. I was reasonably supportive, but
You were intelligent and snarky, which is what you got paid for on morning
Well-
video, I'm guessing.
a little bit of that too. But I would literally get hate mail from people about how I looked. You know, you're so fat. Why are you on the radio? That kind of stuff. And so that, you know, that's wounding, actually. I sort of hate to admit that I let those people get to me, but it's pretty hard not to. And so over time, I really developed a reluctance to be seen. And that cost me. And one of the things I speak about when I talk with women about this now, and Susan, I know you're on the same page with this about being seen, that if you're not willing to be seen, you're going to be overlooked.
Mhm.
If you want to be successful, you need to be seen. And for some of us, there's a bit of a barrier to get over. And that was certainly true for me. And I think in the long run, my career suffered because I didn't do more public appearances. I didn't do more self-promotion. I was very comfortable hiding behind a microphone. I loved it. I was good at it.
Very
But
good.
getting out there actually with people, you know, I missed out on big opportunities because I was so uneasy about that. And, you know, it came back to bite me.
I'm just curious, what was it about being on video that was intimidating for you?
Are you looking at me? No, I'm kidding.
You're a lovely.
But
engaging
that's
I
the
looked
thing.
for 3 hours across a lunch table one time. I mean, it was a very fabulous day.
Yeah. It's a lot about weight and some about age. And that's why the Zoe Lofgren post was so interesting to me, not just my post, but the comments that people had to make about it. Because I do think women are penalized for getting older in a way that men are not in American culture today. I think that's easing somewhat, but gosh, you know, some of it is when I got into radio, I was part of the first generation of women in radio. So there weren't older role models to speak of, you know, maybe one or two women, Betty Sanders, okay, in all of Chicagoland. And so some of it is that there weren't people to look up for. So it's not that they were invisible women, it's that there weren't any. But I also think that women become invisible as we age. And so two things that requires a societal change in terms of ageism, sexism, et cetera. But it also may require us to change. So there's something to be said for being willing to show up and be vibrant and visible at any age, and not to give up, and not to shrink, and not to hide.
And it can cost us. And to be very clear, I have coached women just out of college, in their 30s, in their 50s. Like, this isn't necessarily an experienced side of the spectrum thing. There's a problem generally that I find with people in career transition of needing to be seen, wanting to be seen, wanting to be taken seriously, wanting to get that job offer, and oh my God, someone's going to see me. So oftentimes I talk to people about owning their power and stepping into the light. And I think both of you have versions of that you work with in clients. I'd love to hear your process. But when I have people imagine being on the stage and stepping into the light, especially if they've ever done any type of theater or have, you know, if they're a visual thinker, that can work really well. But this push-pull of visibility for anybody at any point in their career, I don't care. You know, even if you say you want to be a public speaker, I want to be a public speaker, but I don't want to do video. You know,
Yeah, that was me.
Raising hand.
Yeah.
We've all struggled with that. So what would you say? What are you seeing with your clients?
I think a lot of it is physical. So to your point about going through an exercise of actually visualizing the light, literally it's about, how do I sit? How do I stand? Am I grounded? Can I feel the energy in my body? And I take people through that sort of an embodiment, let's call it, of literally feeling the energy. And you can watch people, and I do this in groups often, where you can see people in a room start to grow in their chair. Like they've been kind of doing this. And as they get intentional about where their parts are, you know, shoulders down, head up, chin up, all of that, like literally to make all those adjustments, people start to not only look different, but begin to feel different, because so much of it really is somatic. When I feel the power center below my navel, I can begin to expand from that. And that power begins to fill my body. And it animates my voice, and it informs my interaction with other people. And practicing that helps a lot.
Susan, what would you add to that? I know some of it resonates with you.
Yeah, I love what you just said, Catherine, about the embodiment. And one of the things that I've heard from people on networking calls and also in calls with clients is they'll say, I have this woman at work and I want what she has. And when I ask them, well, you know, unpack that, what is it that she has? And the word that they always go back to is confidence. And then I'll ask them, well, define confidence. What does that look like? And what does it mean to you? Because it means different things to different people. And it ultimately is exactly what you described. It's the embodiment. It's the connection to that power that so many of us, I think for a lot of women, we've never connected to it. And for those of us that do connect to it, that can be very scary, because they go, oh my God, this already exists in me. And now what do I do? Because what is it going to mean if I suddenly start showing up from that place? How are people going to receive me? Am I going to come across as too strong, too much, too confident?
Oh,
and
just don't get,
fun.
oh, I can hardly hold back. That, Susan, that stuff that people say, what if they think I'm too pushy, or I'm too aggressive, or I'm too confident, or I'm too strong, just drives me crazy. You'll notice that men rarely worry about being too confident or too assertive or too almost anything, right? This is so much a woman thing. And I have heard this even since before I was a coach, but certainly in the entire time I've been doing this work, I hear from women who are really afraid of how they'll be perceived if they fully show up. And I think we need to let go of that, because the truth is, it's a wonderful thing to show up. I know this because I do. And there's not much about it that's negative. Have I been criticized on an occasion for being too much?
Too much, too big, too loud, too vocal.
Yes, I have.
Whatever.
But yeah, well, and you know, what we're dancing around here is people will think I'm a bitch. I mean, this is what women say to me frequently, right? Yeah, but what if they think I'm a bitch? Own it.
Mm-hmm.
I'm all good with it.
I thought you would be.
What I want to throw in my 2 cents in this, because I'm like, if people are integrated, if they're grounded, if they're in their power, it doesn't come off as bitchy or aggressive. It comes off as magnetic. When you get that, ooh, kind of feeling is when someone's posturing, proving, coming from a place of fear, from not enoughness, from that sets off a bad reaction with who's ever in the room with you. They're like, oh, they're out of integrity. Yeah. They're not okay with it. This is, get me out of here. So the most magnetic, powerful position is confidence, and it's sexy as heck. So bringing your confidence is not going to backfire. If you're getting that bad reaction, it's because you're not integrated and you're not comfortable with your own power. What would the two of you say to that?
That's a really good way to put it. That I think when we put on the confidence mask and try to pretend that we are all in and confident, what you're talking about is the result. And when there's something inside me that really feels entitled to the space I'm in and the attention I'm getting, then there isn't any of that negativity. It actually, you're right, it is magnetic.
And I would add that I've been told this in the past, and you hear it all the time. Oh, you just have to fake it until you make it. And I just think it's the worst advice, because not only do you feel out of alignment and it's awkward, everybody else in the room can also realize that this is she's faking this. This isn't who she is.
Mm.
And then I think that just creates a bigger gap between who you really want to be and that person that already exists inside of you. It just seems like you just get further and further detached from it. And if we would just allow ourselves to just drop into that and feel that and not think, oh, I have to hold this back. If you're willing to step into it, that is the, I want what she has. That's that energy that these women really want to have. And it's because the person that they are admiring has dropped into that part of us that it exists for all of us.
I'd like to add something else about it too. So some of this is postural, right? It's what we look like and what people are picking up from us, almost in a vibration. All right. I know it's a little airy fairy, but go with me. But also some of it is what they hear. And one of the areas where I focus with a lot of women is freeing their voice, because it's really easy to get sort of choked off. I don't know very much about chakras. Y'all might be better suited for that. But there's the throat chakra, right? People get blocked here. And I have worked with women who have a long history of not expressing themselves, not saying how they feel or not saying what they really mean, and being penalized for saying what they mean, even at a very young age, and learning to keep things to themselves. And it's as if they get choked off here.
No, they do get choked off. It's a physical reaction. They absolutely do.
Their voice is kind of thin and tinny, and it sounds like this, and it all comes out of the head, like up here. So there's no support for it in the body, and it's really nasal often and just small. So one of the antidotes to that is this embodiment, being comfortable in my skin, occupying my space, grounding myself, breathing all the way down and feeling the energy come up and out from my core and bring my voice with it. And that changes the tonality from that sort of strangled, tense sound into something much richer and fuller. It's not so much about pitch. I mean, women's voices will always be at a higher pitch than men's, but it's the fullness of the voice that we hear. And when we hear that, we hear confidence. And when we hear that tiny little voice up here in the head, we hear childlike or shrinking or small.
Or lack of confidence or insecurity or anxiety or any of those.
So the other piece to that is about here. It's about relaxing. The jaw is perhaps the strongest muscle in the body, if not close to it, right? And it's very short, but it's very strong. And so we carry, most of us, some tension in here. Letting go of that, like literally opening and relaxing the jaw, can free a voice in a way that is surprising to people when they hear it come out of their own mouth.
Oh, juicy. I have terrible problems with clenching my jaw. That's something I definitely need to work on. And then there's also things that people can practice, like not going up at the end of everything and not making everything sound like a question. Are you sure or right? that takes some time. And one of the things we might not know that we do, but we look on video, we're like, oh my God, who is that person who's always asking the question at the end?
Yeah.
What do you see in your clients, Susan?
Well, you know, it's interesting that you bring that up, because that's one of the talking points that I use around shrinking is verbal communication and how the inflection of going up. And I had a woman actually challenge me on that. And she said that she had read that when people's voices go up and everything sounds like a question, that was actually a sign of higher intelligence. And I had not been able to verify that at all, but I agree with you that I think, Catherine, you have something to say on this.
I'm sorry. This is what we used to do in the studio, right? You're talking, I'm listening, but I'm raising my hand because I would like to talk next, if that's okay. But I'm not interrupting you, you'll notice.
No, I'd love to know your thoughts on that, if you've heard that.
Well, I have not heard that, but I have heard pushback increasingly, and usually from younger women who will say to your face, look, this is how I talk, like it or lump it.
Deal with it.
I mean, really, they are just like, they're over being criticized about talking like little girls and insisting that, you know, that's their thing. And I'm fine with that. You have it. If that's how you want to talk, you talk that way. And be aware that for many people, especially perhaps people who are older than you, like say your bosses and your clients, they form an impression of that. And it's likely not the impression you'd like them to have. So of course we all have a choice, you know. I could go to a business meeting with nose rings and those big holes, you know, like the earrings that make giant. I can do that if I want to, and if it's important to me, I will.
Yep.
And I know that some people will have a different impression of me based on all of that. If I'm willing to go with that, then that's fine.
Well,
But,
you know,
but it doesn't change the fact that people interpret the question mark as questioning, which shouldn't be a surprise, should it?
I want to add in something about you get to be who you are, though. Some people think that in order to make it on camera or have good interactions, they have to be bouncy and energetic and, you know, the happy chipper person. And that's maybe not them. They are sometimes the analytical one, the voice of reason, the considered one. I think you can make your personality, it can work. You don't have to turn yourself inside out to be the chipper one, the upbeat one. I think you can.
I think that's totally true. Now here's where can I do a plug? I never do this. In my book, Show Up and Shine, Simple Steps to Boost Your Confidence and Charisma, I actually wrote about you have different ways to shine. You can shine like the sun. That's what you're talking about. The bouncy and extroverted and lights up a room and it attracts listeners. There's that kind of charisma. You can also shine like the moon, which is a much quieter energy and in many ways more magnetic. So there are a lot of ways to have that charisma or that ability to captivate people. And you're exactly right. We don't have to all be the same. And we are at our most charismatic when we are being true to ourselves.
We're back to the authenticity being really attractive.
And so then people say, well, then how can you tell me to be authentic and then tell me not to have a question mark in your voice, right? Mm-hmm. And some of it goes back to deciding for myself how I want to show up. And there are times when it is to my advantage to show up as quite professional. And there are times when it is to my advantage to show up as looser and more fun and easygoing. And those are all me. I mean, I'm not one-dimensional.
Right.
They're all me. They're different aspects of me. And I might choose to sort of like the way I would choose to put on my silk fuchsia jacket for a podcast and not the knock around the house thing I was wearing earlier. I might choose a different, call it a wardrobe.
Right.
Yeah,
Absolutely.
but I loved what you said there, but it doesn't matter who you're speaking to, you are being you. So you might change your clothes or you might change the way you are communicating, but ultimately the message that you're bringing, the energy that you're putting out into the world is aligned with who you are. And I definitely agree. I've had sometimes I'll walk on the boardwalk and something will come to me that I feel is really important, and have a baseball cap on, no makeup, and I'll get on and I'll do a short video. And I always think to myself afterwards, okay, it wasn't as polished, but those things are the ones that get the most comments and interactions, because I'm not editing myself at all. I'm showing up exactly as who I am in that moment, and people really resonate and they say, this is who Susan is. And I feel that establishes deeper connection, even with people you don't know. They get to know who you are.
That's great. So I'm going to ask you, do you think it's different now than 2019? I think that too much overproduction and snazzy posturing, let's show up pro, show up, use good lighting, get a microphone, like do your thing. But too much, I find, is off-putting at this point. I'm like, what are you hiding? How have you seen 2019 different from 2022, when we all did this so much and we saw people's cats walking by and things?
So I would say that I was never a fan of the virtual backgrounds, and that's one of the things that comes to my mind when you talk about the sort of set design, and it just feels phony to me. It makes me go, "What are you hiding from us?" So in terms of virtual platforms, my preference is how we all have it, right? This is me, busy speaker at work in her office, my office behind me. Now, I am not pointing the camera at my desk, which I haven't really cleared off yet today. And it's a little messy and I don't need to show it to the world. So I admit I have curated my background, but it's not fake, right? And it's not something that doesn't feel like home for me. And I think people pick up on that they see us as being in an environment that feels like home for us.
What do you think, Susan?
I agree completely. I apologize. There's a helicopter right over here. I completely agree that I always wonder, it doesn't look natural when somebody has a fake background, just even the energy that they're giving off, it's a distraction. I would much rather see even a stark wall behind where I can get to experience you and your energy, and nothing is hidden.
All right, so let's leave people with one tip for better presentation online, on video. I have coached people on this. Susan was on one of the calls with it. A woman, very nice woman, had a bunch of windows behind her with a lovely foliage, but that wreaks havoc on the camera calculating the light. So she was shaded in the middle of this very lovely background that dwarfed her, and she looked older and her energy wasn't as good. We had her move and be in front of, it's kind of a setting like you are, Catherine, and with the camera closer. And all of a sudden, she's getting second round interviews and third round interviews. She's not getting dwarfed by her, what seemed to her very professional background. Yesterday, I had a call with somebody who's in advertising and should know better. And he's sitting behind a window. He's, my age, so, senior end of experienced. And we made him do the same thing. He looked 10 years longer, more engaging. He's like, oh my God, this call was totally worth it just for that tip. And I should have known better. So what's like an easy, helpful thing that somebody could say, I'm doing that?
So I'm going to say, fill the space. You want small amount of headroom. So Catherine, I know you adjusted before you started, and yet you could use a little more adjustment by now, right?
Yeah.
Because because we want to be like this on the camera with small amount of headroom, roughly centered, unless you're showing a visual over your shoulder, which sometimes, you know, you might have on a screen here, but in general, centered left to right, and close enough that you're not invisible, right? I don't want to be back here away from my camera because it makes me small, but I don't want to be staring right into it either. And then get your position. I'm sorry, this is more than one thing. Is
I
that
don't know,
okay?
keep going.
So I think this is really important. Center yourself, get your position, and then of course we move. I move my hands, I might lean, I move my head, but I come back to this centered base position, and I want to exude energy, but not force myself into the screen. Sometimes we get so intent that we start leaning in and looming at people out of the screen. So think of yourself as a fireplace, not a furnace.
Yeah,
So
nobody
it's a
wants to
warm
feel like they're
glow.
being devoured. You don't want people
Right.
looking down at you like,
Yeah. So
that's
it's a warm glow that attracts people and pulls them in. It's not a forced energy that's coming out, shoving at them. Those are my tips.
excellent. Susan, how do we stop shrinking on video? How do we not do the, they called on me?
Well, I was going to say that a lot, and you probably, well, maybe you can tell I'm wearing black, but a lot of women, they just naturally, you know, they're here instead of sitting forward, chest out, shoulders down, head up. Sometimes I'll see people who I guess will have the camera off to the side, but they're looking into their computer, but the camera
Oh, yeah.
in, you want to, like you had said earlier, Catherine, about it's like you have to look into the ether and speak into the ether, so the other person can actually say, "Oh wow, she's speaking to me."
Yeah.
Yeah.
No,
Yeah.
I'm speaking to the red dot. But my friend, video expert Lou Bortone, is out of TV. He says he has a Post-it note with an arrow that says "talk here." Like even somebody who's pro and out of TV has to remind himself to talk to the red dot, not to do this.
The language I use is to talk through the camera, not to it or at it, but through it. So as if your ideal client is right on the other side of the camera, and the camera just, so imagine you're on the phone, right? You don't talk to the phone. You talk to your friend through the phone. Think of the camera the same way. You're not talking to it, through it.
Right. Also remember to smile, folks. Even if you're on phone, it makes your voice sound different.
Yeah.
It makes you connect with your the person you're talking to. Dale Carnegie said this in 1935, and guess what? It still works. All right. Thank you so much, Susan and Catherine Johns, my friend, for
Thank you.
sharing all your wisdom. I think this was juicy.
Good. I'm glad you're happy. I'm happy too. Nice to meet you, Susan.
Great to meet you. This was an awesome conversation. Juicy stuff.